All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm super excited for this panel presentation today, and I'm so grateful for everyone who's joining us as well. We're going to go ahead and get started. So today's presentation is a follow-up to our magazine special that we recently published called College Ready, Career Prepared, a guide to post-secondary education for youth in foster care. We're going to drop in the chat where you can order yourself a digital copy and or a print copy too. So please feel free to go ahead and grab that and check out our other social media as well. All right, but before we delve deep, I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor for this webinar, the National Foster Parent Association. Their conference is coming up soon. We're also going to drop in the chat more information about that. So feel free to check it out and to join them as well. And a few more housekeeping things. So a little bit about Fostering Families Today. Fostering Families Today is a bi-monthly award-winning magazine dedicated to foster, kinship, and adoptive caregivers and their agencies around the country. If you haven't subscribed, you're missing out. So please do that immediately. And then this is something else that I've participated in and another one of our panelists has as well, the Youth Voice program. So through educational workshops, writing and poetry contests, paid contributor roles, and intensive fellowships, Youth Voice provides writing opportunities to young people who have lived experience in the child welfare and youth justice systems. If you can donate or support, please feel free to do that. All right, so today's presentation is meant to be interactive. I want you to drop your questions in the chat, and I want you to also engage with our questions. So our first poll is, did you or someone you know experience mental health issues during college? Let us know. If you don't know if it's a yes or a no, it's probably a yes. So go ahead and drop that yes button. And then we're going to close our poll momentarily. I see some people are in the chat saying yes, that they have experienced that and they do know people with those issues as well. It's very normal. All right, so our poll is in and we have about 81% of people saying yes and 19% of people saying no, which I'm not surprised. It kind of aligns with the data, and we'll talk about that very shortly in some upcoming polls and information that we have. So I thought it would be really important to share some statistics with you. Now, while these statistics are not specific to foster youth, I have read some articles and some research that suggest the compounded trauma of being in foster care and being a college student in foster care only exasperates these numbers. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read off these statistics before we delve deeply into our conversation today. And if anything sticks out to you, feel free to engage in the chat, drop in the chat how you feel about it, or if you're shocked or surprised about any of it as well. So first and foremost, up to 44% of college students reported symptoms of depression and anxiety. Suicide is the third leading cause of death for college students. Of those diagnosed with a mental health disorder, 75%, or 3/4, have their first episode by age 24. 30% of students reported feeling depressed in the past year. Nearly 2/3 of students with substance abuse problems also suffer from mental health disorders such as anxiety and depression. And up to 75% of students struggling will not seek help. I know that was really heavy, but I'm going to introduce our panel so that we can delve deeply into some of those topics and more. So first and foremost, hi, my name is Ivory Bennett, and I have the wonderful privilege of facilitating today's panel and conversation. I'm a Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania native who is currently a manager of teacher leadership and development in Dallas, Texas. Additionally, I'm an active advocate for both education and foster care equity, with 17 years of lived experience in foster care. Outside of education, I'm an avid writer. All right, our first guest is Kenyon Lee Whitman. and he is a monthly columnist for the imprint and currently a UC Chancellor's postdoctoral fellow at UCLA, where he works in the Pritzker Center for Strengthening Children and Families and the Center for Transformation of Schools. His research focuses on the racialized college-going experiences of foster youth. Prior to UCLA, he was the director of the Office of Foster Youth Support Services at the University of California, Riverside, where he oversaw the Guardian Scholars Program. Dr. Whitman also spent his entire adolescence in foster care, emancipating when he was 18 years old. Also joining us is Melanie Jae-hee Chung Sherman. She is a licensed clinical social worker and board-approved clinical supervisor in Texas. Jae-hee is the founder and director of a private practice in North Dallas, where she specializes in working with predominantly QT BIPOC identified clients and transracial adult adopted individuals. She also identifies as a transracial international adopted person. She has an extensive experience in child welfare, mental health, university counseling, medical social work, and as an adjunct professor of social work. She is a doctoral student at the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa. Next is Angela Quijada Banks. Angela is an NAACP Image Awards nominee and American Award-winning author of the Black Foster Youth Handbook. She is also a recently certified holistic health coach. Congratulations, Angela. And a highly requested transformational speaker who has touched thousands with her message to alchemize your pain to purpose and power. Next, we have our New Orleans native, Aaliyah Zane, and she is the eldest of 5 siblings and is an alumni of the state's foster care system. She's a registered social worker and youth ambassador with Empower 225. Aaliyah's team works with the Louisiana State Youth Advisory Board to increase opportunities, training, and overall well-being for former foster youth. She is a co-author of Senate Bill 151, Louisiana's first foster care Bill of Rights, signed into law on June 16, 2021. And finally, joining us from Tampa, Florida, Alfonso Nuazman III. Alfonso currently manages data integration and an insurance management platform. Because of his mother's addiction and his father's incarceration, he and his 3 brothers were placed into foster care on October 29, 1999. Alfonso was 9 years old. His mission is to build generational wealth and to reverse the curse of his family history. He wants to share his journey with people of similar experiences and to offer hope and encouragement. Thank you all for joining us so much. I'm so honored to be here and to hear what you have to say today. But very quickly, before we delve into your stories and your experiences and your opinions, I wanted to define for us what mental health is, and then we're also going to kind of come to a conclusion about a collective understanding of trauma, because I think it will be really important for our audience members to work from the same definition. So first and foremost, mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, how we feel, how we act. It also determines how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is an important part of every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence all the way through adulthood, and especially during higher education. We're going to drop in the chat for you this graphic. I think it's a wonderful resource for yourself. You can print it out and put it on your desk. You can share it with your colleagues, or share it with former foster youth or current foster youth, just so that you can have an understanding as to what mental health really looks like right now, especially in this climate of the pandemic. All right, and then we have one more resource that we're going to drop in the chat for you as well. We might hear this word a lot, but we might not have a clear understanding or a collective understanding. So trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event, like an accident, rape, or natural disaster. Immediately after the event, shock and denial are typical. Longer-term reactions include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea. While these feelings are normal, some people have difficulty moving on with their lives, and that's directly from the American Psychological Association. So keep that in mind as we talk about our experiences today. One more poll, and I know I'm keeping you from our panelists. I promise we're going to get to them. I promise, but I want to pick your brains a little bit. So, true or false question, really quickly. Anyone can experience trauma. True or false? Let us know. Drop in the chat, complete the poll. We're going to talk about it. Anyone can experience trauma. All right, I see y'all are a bright bunch. Everyone marked true. That is very true. And we're going to delve into some of our own experiences with trauma. I really want to put this disclaimer out there, though, for all of the panelists and even the presenters, the people viewing us here today. Please do not share anything that you don't feel comfortable sharing. This is a safe space, and I want to maintain that and protect that for y'all. So don't feel like you have to share a story. And also, we want to steer away from sharing the stories of other people. Because I believe in consent when sharing our opinions, right? So let's make sure that we're mindful of that. Okay, fantastic. Two more stats, and then we're going to get into it. I promise I'm not keeping you from them. All right, so 70% of adults in the US have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. That is 223.4 million people, y'all. 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 people have experienced at least one traumatic event. I would argue that foster kids, we have to have at least 5 or 10 under our belts personally, but we can talk more about that soon. And then lastly, studies estimate that 90% of children who enter foster care experience a traumatic event in their lives. I would argue that those numbers are higher, but this is what the data reveals to us now. I also want to note that when I was researching for this presentation, it was very hard to find data specific to foster youth that was current, meaning less than 5 years old. And even when you go into 12 and 15 years ago, the data is still very sparse. So that's saying something in itself. All right, so my first question is going to go to Jahi. So let's talk about young people transitioning to life after high school. It's already a tough time, but for someone with lived foster care experience, as they get ready to go to college, which stressors are they likely to face, which might make them more vulnerable to mental health challenges? Jahi, are you there? I don't think we can hear you. No.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, we can hear you now.
That's strange. Okay, well, let me.
No worries, no worries.
I want to be on. I want to honor lived experiences and be really clear and not co-opt experiences of those who have lived, at least here in the U.S. foster care system. So I have, though I'm a transracial international adopted person, mine is as a young child. So this is not the same. And so when I'm working with clients, some of the universal themes, some of the universal narratives is a sense of grafting several different identities and really trying to figure out where the heck do I land. This can move into spaces where depression, anxiety, and even a sense of belongingness is really questioned. And transitioning to yet another part of life, whether that is in a college, university, whether that is watching friends transition and leave, and particularly for those who may have emancipated from family systems. Where do I fit within my biological family, my foster families, all these different caregivers, and in a system that is really built on the roots of oppression that, we were kind of talking. I don't want to take that space, as Dr. Whitman was sharing, related to what is the expectation, as if foster alum are supposed to immediately graft into the space of, oh, now I'm 18, as if something magical is supposed to happen. And that expectation not only is oppressive and biased, but it's also harmful. But so many clients have shared how this has impacted them internally. Imposter syndrome, a sense of inadequacy, a sense of failure, when really, when we deconstruct it, it's a system that has failed. It is multiple things: racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ageism, ableism, all of these different spaces of trying to connect when I may not even know where I connect. If that makes sense. Um,
That's very powerful.
makes sense
Yeah.
in terms of suicidality, eating disorder, substance use. It is not because of the individual, it's because of what's happened. And when we continue to identify it is something wrong with the individual versus really deconstructing and decolonizing that and looking at what has happened, then we continue to pathologize our clients. We continue to pathologize fosterees and adopted people, foster alum and adopted people, and we see them one dimensionally. And the research is outdated, I agree. Because guess who holds the power of the pen and publications?
That part. Yeah, you said something that made me think back to when I was 18, when I was transitioning into college, and I was known as a gifted student. A lot of people didn't even realize I was in foster care. And then a few minutes before this presentation started, Dr. Whitman was mentioning this idea about resiliency. And we get into a discussion about how it feels toxic at this point to label foster kids resilient. And I think a lot of the youth who find themselves in a position to attend a higher education course of studies or who have something that they're going to do after high school get labeled resilient, right? Because we've made it. But I remember feeling so insufficient in comparison to my peers. I would look at the things they were doing. They were going to foreign countries. You know, they were getting cars effortlessly. They were having fun. I didn't have fun in college. And so like I was like, look at them having fun. And and I'm over here trying to get this degree and it doesn't feel like anything anyone told me would feel like. And so I just remember a lot of comparison, and they say comparison is the thief of joy, right? But how are we affording foster kids the opportunity to have joy alongside of their higher education journeys? I think for me, that's something that needs to be prioritized and centered when we have these conversations as well. So Dr. Whitman, please tell us your experiences with this next question. So you've led the Guardian Scholars Program across multiple campuses. What are the greatest barriers that young people with lived experience often face?
Thank you. The stat that says 90% of children who enter foster care experience a traumatic event in their lives, I just want to start there real quick. And can we not just say 100% definitively, because just being removed from your family's care is traumatic. That's a big T trauma, right? And regardless of what types of abuse even and or neglect was happening, we know that children still love their parents, right? As someone who was removed from the care of my home, right? Like you still love your parents, you still love where you come from, you still love your extended family members that you won't no longer be able to see as often as you would like, right? So like that moment in and of itself upends and changes your whole life moving forward that I don't think any person here would sign up for, right? But going back to your initial question, I think you kind of were speaking to it. And so John Cita, a scholar at Michigan State, that I use his theory in my work around family privilege, right? Everything you says is colleges and universities are built to support and educate a very specific kind of student, right? Typically white male students who are from middle class backgrounds, right? But then as universities diversify, other students are also included in that fold. However, we still grossly miss and underserve students who do not have nuclear families. And so what do you do when it's homecoming and family weekend, as many universities have? What do you do when you go for your orientation and campus visit and they separate the students from the parents, right? How do you just navigate this thing called the FAFSA, right? You know, how do you navigate doing your taxes on your own, right? All those little things that when you're 18, 19, heck, I have friends in their mid 30s that still live with their parents, right? So I think in many ways, the lack of fun and the constant survival mode young people who were in foster care are like navigating and constantly in, and so was I, is because we don't have a safety net, right? Whether it's financial or emotional, right? Like even just having someone to call you to tell you they're thinking about you, they're praying over you, they're thinking, you're like all those little things that kind of give you that extra boost in life, that as humans, it becomes a basic need, right? And so we have to interrogate the ways in which foster care has stripped young people of that basic need.
That was so well said. That also made me think about the social aspect of the support required to get through college. And for those of you who might have gone into master's programs or PhD programs, there's a whole nother aspect to it of socializing and schmizing and who you need to know and politicking, right? That if you are in care, unless you just have a natural inclination towards those things, you're not really going to know necessarily. And those are usually arenas in which people will usher you in. Your father, your mother will bring you into those circles, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, they bring you into those circles. They introduce you to the people who help you move from one phase of your career to the next. You mentioned being in the 30s, friends who are still living at home. I wish I could live it. I don't want to pay rent, y'all. It's sucking all of my income. Like, it's awful, but I have peers whose parents gave them a down payment on a house. I have peers whose parents brought their cars. I have peers whose parents paid for their education. Now, a lot of foster youth can go to school for free, but I was just at that cusp before they made it free for people in Pennsylvania. So I still have $80,000 in debt. And that's with a lot of scholarships and grants. I don't know if anyone on here has those experiences as well, but we're just starting off on such rocky footing, full of debt and sadness and exhaustion. It's a tiring process too. So thank you so much for sharing. Okay, Angela, Aaliyah, and Alfonso, how did you mentally feel and emotionally feel when you were entering college towards the end of your collegiate experience? Feel free to just jump in as well.
Can you say the question one more time, Ivory?
Yeah. Do you remember how you felt when you first walked on campus? You know, we had our little backpacks, probably our little Tupperware of clothes that we went out to get and packed and styled and we're ready to go. How did you feel? Did you feel excited? Did you feel shocked? I felt overwhelmed. There was a lot going on with my biological family. It was just not ideal. But what were your feelings as a freshman versus towards the end of your academic career?
Okay, so when I first started Southeastern in Louisiana, I was 17. So I was still a minor. And I pursued my college education because I knew that that was going to be like a way out for me. I was Asian out of care in a very rural part of Louisiana, pretty much where, you know, once you graduate, if you go get a job at Walmart or, you know, at the plants or whatever, you know, that was enough. And, you know, people of color, and which is fine because a lot of my classmates from high school, they do that now. But when I walked on campus, I was happy, you know, to be kind of breaking free away from the system to an extent. Because at first, yeah, I did major in social work, and that was the major I chose when I first started, but that was mostly motivated by personal reasons at first. It wasn't motivated by that educational aspect. So I was motivated to go to college because I felt like that was one of the only things that I could do. Um, Secondly, you know, when I first got on campus, it was all fine and good, but I realized real quick that I was not like the other people there. Whenever weekends came up, you know, my former foster parents now, which I am still in touch with, you know, my former caregiver, but once again, I'm from the rural South. So when weekends came up, I was expected to come home and assist with the children, the younger siblings. I was expected to still uphold responsibilities in my community. Whenever I got my first refund from college, I went home and helped out, you know, my people, my family, you know, with bills and different things that was going on. So it was, for me, it was more so not just doing it like for the people around me, but also because I knew that was one of the only ways that I would really be able to reach any type of success, like in life, or any type of stability. When I wasn't giving money, to the people around me, it was like I never got taught about budgeting. So I ran through a lot of different, resources that were available, even if it was a loan. So I caused myself a lot of financial hardships due to that. But I guess like towards the end, to wrap up, I guess, I was one of those that had to try to decide, where to go during breaks. After I turned 18 and everything like that, even though I had been attending college, my caregiver filled up all the rooms in her house and things like that. So even if you go there, there's nowhere for you to sleep. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to be surrounded by other people. So it's not that, oh, I didn't have anybody that cared about me. It was just that I knew that it really wasn't for me anymore. So I did have to find places to go, and things like that. So that was a struggle for me. And I always felt like an outcast in comparison to other people on campus. I did have one permanent connection that I ended up coming back in contact with, a godmother, but I used to lie to people and tell them that was my aunt because, I didn't want people to feel like, something was wrong with me. And then I guess lastly, whenever I was graduating, because of the different obstacles and stuff that I really had to like endure during school and feeling different, sometimes feeling too down and too depressed, to get up and do anything, having took so many losses and having to overcome so many different things. 2 days before graduation, I sat in my car and cried, I'm a real spiritual person. So for me, I just kind of was listening to my gospel music and the tears just really was flowing out. And my tagline, like with graduation, because I felt relieved and I was ecstatic. But my tagline with graduation was use the broken pieces from my past as building blocks for my future. So that's pretty much the feeling that I had when I finally finished school.
Aaliyah, thank you so much. Like, I just remember that made me think so much about how that phase of my life not only made me feel so ostracized in the context of being on campus, but also within my own biological family. And even now in my peer group of other people who were in care with me, right? Because not only am I in this space and place where I don't really fit in with my peers on campus, but the people I aged out of care with, they're not going to school. They don't know what I'm going through. And then my biological family, they haven't done this either. So it just felt incredibly ostracizing. And I feel like there were so many tears that were cried. And I cry like once a year now. I'm working on it. I know crying is a part of good mental and emotional health and well-being, but like I'm not someone who cries easily, but I feel like I cried a lot during that time in my life. And it was a lot to deal with. Angela or Alfonso, do you want to hop in and share how you felt at the beginning of your experiences with higher education versus the end?
I think I saw Alfonso unmute first.
Yes. So, hi, I'm Alfonso. Thanks for having me, everyone. So yeah, it's not very different. I had a really unique and transformative and positive experience in 10th grade. I was admitted to Milton Hershey School, which is a very good school for underprivileged youth. It gave me an opportunity and the mind state, the information to pursue a higher education. But not very different in college. I was different than a lot of the kids who went there. So the day we graduated high school, you go home with your family. You walk across the stage, you go, your bags are packed, you leave. And then I didn't realize until that moment I had nowhere to go. No one was coming to meet me. My caseworker stopped by to wave me goodbye and wish me well. And so I'm standing in this ginormous marble building, figuring out what I'm going to do. Luckily, I found work and a housing on campus actually, but that feeling of being lost, spinning in the wind, not having a sense of direction, it followed me all the way into college. And I was dropped off on campus, and I kind of recoiled into myself. I didn't socialize. I didn't get into very many things the first few months, and then when I did, those things became a distraction from my education, from the anxiety, from the depression, from the longing, and so I don't think lived up academically to the standards that I was accustomed to. Socially, I stuck to the folks I knew from high school, didn't give myself opportunities to expand. I was afraid to challenge myself for fear of failure, because I knew that there was nothing to fall back on. And rather than to face these things head on, um, it was just a continuous cycle of hedonistic behavior, whatever can make me feel good right now, hanging out, partying, neglecting my schoolwork. And that resulted in me not finishing school. And ultimately, um, about the last month I was on campus or what have you, or engaging, probably like 2014 or 15. Um, I went in to get evaluated, and to understand, like, why do I feel this way? And when a list of like potential causes was given to me, I just panicked. Like, I can't afford this. I can't afford to leave school. I don't have a job. I'm in college. I can't. And so then I just shut down, packed up, and started my life over. Luckily, I was able to build a set of skills to create a life for myself. And actually, school starts next month. I left school with like 18 credits. Talk about dropping out in the 16th grade. But, you know, uh, having a good support system around myself, surrounding myself with really good people helped me keep me in the mind state to pursue my professional aspirations. And I think that where maybe my parents or the system may have failed, um, uh, mentors and really good friends, colleagues, peers, they really stepped up, especially, as people close to me understand my story and see my passion for growth. So it was a rocky road. It was a hard exit. I'm still back on the horse trying to accomplish the things I set out for. It's important to me. I want to be the first one in my family to graduate, but I think my story is a great example of when you don't face these things head on and you bury them in partying and working and earning money and these things. There's the problems are still there waiting for you. You okay, I'll just earn money and then I'll leave school. And then you set yourself behind and on a longer, broader path to the resources you need to live the life you want to live. So that's kind of the position I took, and maybe it's a cautionary tale, maybe it relates to someone else's potential experiences, but um, yeah, that's kind of my journey in and out of college, and then, like I said, round and round we go. Classes start in 2 weeks, and I still have all the opportunity in the world to accomplish what I set out for. Just don't ever give up. So yeah.
You can totally do it. And what you said in the beginning of your sharing reminded me of a question that I'd like to ask everyone now. And then, hello, please, you've been patiently waiting. I want to hear what you have to say. But do any of you, and I'll answer this as well, do any of you feel like you've been able to live up to your full potential academically? I personally do not. But is there anyone here who feels like you had everything that you needed to reach your highest potential?
It would not be fair for me to. I mean, so much resources are made available to me that, I think that I needed to do a better job taking advantage. I mean, if Milton Hershey's a $6 billion institution, they paid for everything, they made it easy for it. I didn't execute self-maintenance well enough to take advantage of what was being given to me for free. And so, and I was born with a gift. I was born with a brain. Like if you were given a brand new Ferrari, you don't put oil and gas in it, you don't wash it, you loan it out to anyone, even a good car will stop working on you. So, I had all the resources. An abundant resources, especially for a ward of the state, a foster kid. But I still had to take advantage, and that's, I guess we're going to have less shots as foster kids in general. Not everyone's going to be as fortunate as I was. So just focusing in to take advantage when the opportunity comes about, so important.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Do you feel like you've reached your full potential?
I think what's been a common thread has definitely been like the holistic stability and continuously like with mental health or physical health, spiritual community, just connection. So I think those things, and of course the financial aspect, right? Because even though everyone's like, let's not talk about money, like that's a huge piece as to the quality of the resources and education you're able to have access to. So I would say no, absolutely not. And I think part of it is definitely taking personal accountability, but I think the other piece of it is not necessarily individualized. I think it's overwhelmingly systemic. And I think we should give ourselves more credit for what we've actually been able to endure and still be here. And I just also want to just extend a congratulations to Alfonso for continuing on the path that he started.
Well, since you started speaking, do you want to go ahead and share with us a little bit about how you felt at the beginning of your studies, Angela, versus towards the end?
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to everyone that has like highlighted some really key points like about identity and sense of belonging. I feel like I resonated so much with a piece of what everyone has said so far. Um, I would say in the beginning, because I was so focused on going to college and going to a university ever since I was in elementary school. And because of my path and then going through foster care, I feel like I just got so mentally exhausted and I was like, this isn't for me. There's no way I'm going to be able to do it. There was also like a gatekeeping of resources in my experience as well. So, just trying to figure out what was available, would it actually be possible for me to go? And then actually starting to have some mental health support and then thinking through like, okay, this actually can be possible for me. I can actually do this now, even though I've had all these challenges. And then I would say I didn't feel very prepared when I first entered university first year. I was in a very unhealthy romantic relationship. I think that's a key part that a lot of people don't talk about, right? Like the relationships that you are connected in as an adolescent. And so I was in a relationship and that boyfriend at the time wanted to follow me to my university, and I wanted to separate. And for many different reasons, we were both mentally unstable. And I just didn't think that it was a great time for us. We needed some space to like heal and other things. And so I don't know, I feel like I really needed some stable supports. I was really confused about how I was supposed to approach college. What did that even mean? I was the first in my family. So that piece, the second piece of like housing stability, like if I mess up or do something wrong, because at that time I decided to sign myself back in to the system. So it was like, am I going to be able to continue all these different requirements, And I was a part of several different organizations as well to have some mentorship. And I think what was the most difficult at that time going into my first year was this expectation of like having 18 credit hours and supposed to have a full-time job and maintain a certain GPA and figure out all the things about who I was as a person in connection to my siblings, as the older sister, as a daughter, as all these things. And it was just really frustrating. And then different placements at the time not working out because I don't know, maybe because I was a teenager, they wanted me to be on birth control. I mean, there was a lot, and I wasn't even sexually active. So it was just really frustrating to try to explain those different things as well. Almost like adultification in the aspect of like, these are different things that she is doing and I wasn't. and these assumptions. And it just was, I think, very exhausting for me. So that was kind of the beginning. Was although I was very excited in the fact that I actually was able to go to college, there was all these microcosms of experiences in relation to how would I actually be able to sustain this? How would like this overwhelming excitement of like, yes, I'm going to college, I'm here and taking it all in, looking around the university. And I was in a historically Black college as well. So just looking around and just feeling it all and then being like, oh, am I going to be able to make it though for 4 years and full-time job? And so I would say as I continued on, I ended up breaking up with that romantic relationship. And that was very difficult for me, I think, because there was a lot of other things connected to that with my mental health, with not realizing that was the only stable person I had from like, you know, a couple of years in my life at the time. And so really being on my own and then trying to figure that out. And again, who am I? What am I doing? Like, where am I going? And I was double majoring in psychology and biology. And I decided that I wanted to switch my major at the end of my sophomore year. I too, as Aaliyah was talking about, I too was sharing my finances with my family, you know, sending money back, paying for phone bills for my siblings and cousins, aunts, partial rent payments. I mean, I don't even know what I was doing, honestly, at this point. I remember at one point I had a conversation with one of the organization leaders that we were going through a budget, and she saw that in my budget I put like money for family, and she was like, that shouldn't be in your budget. Like, actually you should, you know, focus on saving and other things. But again, it was difficult to quantify what that would look like, or and the quality of what my experience would look like. And then this overwhelming guilt too, of like, I'm already not a part of my family's life and I haven't been. So this is the way that I'm able to contribute. This is some way that I'm able to feel some kind of sense of belonging, that I'm almost in a way like proving that I'm still caring and a part of this family, since I can't physically, emotionally, or anything really be there. Not to my own fault either. Like, there were restrictions with other foster parents and other social workers with my siblings. So, and also to Ivory's point, I definitely did compare myself to my other peers. And I was just really like, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. What am I doing wrong? Like, I think I'm checking all the boxes, right? But I don't think I should be going out. I don't think I should be like I need to focus on getting this degree. I need to focus on school. And so towards the end, I would say what was most difficult was the constant instability. So for me, after my sophomore year, I was forcibly given a 7-day notice because I was trying to report an unsafe situation in my foster home. My foster parent had at the time, and I only went during weekends and holidays because, you know, where else was I going to go? And that also went into the people pleasing and, you know, just trying to morph myself into the best foster youth that could, you know, have a stable place to be. So whether that meant like giving away a piece of my core values or other aspects, just so that way I could have this goal of getting this degree, but none of that ever worked anyways. So it's kind of was really no point. But I was given a 7-day notice. My foster parent at the time was dating. I think, I'm not sure. I still say that maybe she was going through a midlife crisis, or I'm not sure. But she had multiple men coming in and out of the house. And that was a safety concern for me, because at times I would, you know, be coming out of the shower. The shower was facing the bathroom was facing the living room. And then there would be like a random guy there, like in the living room, and she's not there. She's at her 9-to-5 job. And so that became a concern for me, because I don't know who these people are. And I don't think that that was the best space for me, as well as other situations that happened. And so I tried to report that to a case manager. I didn't have a social worker at the time. She had retired a couple of weeks prior, and I didn't have a guardian ad litem or CASA. She actually was removed from my case after trying to provide me some housing in between placements, and that's against the rules, right? So my social worker at the time had reported her, and so she was taken off my case. So that was a failed attempt for me to try to report this to the case manager. I was given an email the day after of a 7-day notice that I needed to find somewhere else to stay. Long story short, I found somewhere on Craigslist, and my dad, the person I was removed from, came and helped me move there. The savings that I had was based on doing some virtual tutoring services through Chegg. I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with that, but I did that, and I started like a savings when I was 19. So it helped me to move out, but completely unplanned, right? Like I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to continue and pursue my college experience. And so I continued, that was in the summer, continued on. And then unfortunately, I didn't have that much support anymore because now I wasn't able to be connected with these different organizations. And things just kind of spiraled from there. Not great housing stability, I wasn't really taught how to have these long lasting, healthy relationships. So I just I sabotaged a lot of those relationships, whether I wanted to or not, whether that was like just not being consistent in the communication or being clear about certain things, being very vague. And so I think that was a huge piece towards the end, deciding to transfer into another university that was closer and move in with my dad. This was a year later. And I thought this was going to be a good move for me, and I was going to be able to finish my degree. At this point, it was a junior year. And my dad actually told me that, hey, I'll take care of the bill so you don't have to focus on like school. You can do part-time, pay for like the Wi-Fi bill or something, but I really just want you to focus on school, pay for your books, that type of thing. And I was like, okay, like maybe I'll finally be able, the one adult in my life at that time that was stable and that it would work out. But a couple months into the semester, my dad actually ends up getting diagnosed with kidney failure, and he loses his job and everything falls apart financially. And then now I have the obligation of taking care of two adults, myself and my dad, and then also school bills, all the things. So I think it was the constant, just, instability altogether, and just not understanding how valuable and how necessary it was to have social capital and those healthy relationships, and taking care of my mental health on the back end, right? And because I ended up spiraling from there, because I was told the doctor told us that he was not going to make it. So I kind of spiraled into a depression from there, started traveling to different places, taking different jobs in different states, which did help me as far as like identity piece and self-exploration, all the things. But to the collegiate experience, like I had to leave school, and that just kind of made me feel so like a failure. Like, I wasn't able to do, like, I don't understand, like I'm trying so hard, I want this so bad, I don't understand, like why can't I get it right? Like, why can't I figure it out? And why is there always something that's going to happen, like from romantic relationships to family relationships, my dad, and health issues. And it's just like, maybe I'm just not supposed to finish this degree, like at this point. And yeah, so I would say at the end, I just felt very like sad and just frustrated, helpless, confused, angry. But I've now created a completely different path. And I think that it was all part of my journey, and I understand it now. But I think that there's so much that can be done to support youth to be able to, from the beginning to the end, have a very healthy and stable experience.
Thank you for sharing. And like, I just want to be transparent. Like, this is why I feel like family around foster people, because it's like I see a little piece of myself in all of your stories. And it just is so comforting in a way that I don't get to experience from other non-foster care people. So like, thank y'all for showing up in this space. And like, I see you, I'm with you, I feel you. And that's why we do what we do, right? So that those coming behind us don't have to have these experiences. Um, I want to open it up to the entire panel. So do you feel like you had access to resources and that those resources were adequate, or were you missing them? Or was it, just you choosing to not, for whatever reason, use them to your advantage?
I would like to say, I guess I'll link it back to some of my professional work with former foster youth. When I was in school, a lot of the administrators really was not familiar with what foster care even was. And even now, I've seen in my own state and multiple states, it's very hard for coordinators that do actually work with the former youth population that are trying to pursue their degree. That we like to call them a part of the 3% or the future 3%, because only 3%, of former foster youth actually complete college as of right now out of the population that ages out each year. So I think that all colleges should have a specific liaison on campus or department that does actually work with and specify and is knowledgeable in providing services to former foster youth, people that are from out of home placements, people that have, migrated back and forth, people that, really don't have significant support. I think all college campuses should have that, period. Just like they're required to have an ETV liaison for them to receive CHAFE funds, they need somebody that is knowledgeable about the population, whether it's through their social work department, whether it's through their counseling or psychology, department or school, whatever that looks like. Everybody should have some type of support so that when former foster youth do step on campus, they can be identified as someone who can access those supports and be informed about what's available. And lastly, I will just say that I really definitely resonated, with everything that Angela was saying. As always, very truthful. I really appreciate your, transparency, because everybody on here, is very brave to share, whether it was successes or failures. Like, it takes a lot to come and say, hey, due to this, I felt this way, or maybe even due to my own actions at the time, this transpired or this occurred. What I will say though, I guess, just lastly for me, sometimes former foster youth lack a sense of systematic trust, and that does lead to people not wanting to access different services that's available because of different things that's happened to them through large scale systems. They really don't know if they can trust the different services that are offered or what that looks like, or, if they're told, oh, there's counseling on campus, how do I know this isn't going to look like every other mental health provider or service that I've accessed in the past? And I just want to say, for me, I think that I experienced, a lot of failures, both in social relationships, school, all that type of stuff, because I didn't really have like self-love. I didn't have stable relationships. I was always, taught this very strict sense of loyalty and dependability, to where I would make myself be resilient through struggle situations, even when I didn't have to. So some of the things that, we endured, and some things that we do endure as women of color sometimes too, is just that you have to take on all these different things. And that is what's connected to your worth. And even in the system, I remember oftentimes operating off of the mindset of, well, just be grateful it's not like this, or just be glad that it's not this bad. You take that with you in life forever. it impacts everything. And I didn't realize that until maybe a few weeks ago, how deeply it really just impacted everything you accept, how you pursue life, how you operate in friendships, relationships, social environment, your work environment, taking on more than what you can handle, all of that type of stuff. Because in the end, you're really just trying to prove that you deserve to be there, or you're really just like, oh, well, at least it's not this bad, or at least this isn't happening, because that's what you've pretty much been told your whole life. So you carry that with you. And it makes it hard to develop healthy connections, advocate for yourself, go the extra mile when you really need to, all of that. So I think all of that impacts the mindset that we are taught in terms of how to survive when we're in the system. We take that with us into the real world. But the only thing is that the real world's not operating off that mindset, because a lot of them have had stable connections. So it's all around, but at the end of the day, everybody can do it, and everybody has the capacity within themselves to really follow whatever greatness that they want to. Because whenever I see a former foster youth striving, I said, look at all what you had to endure, but you're here. Despite what you went through, but you made it. Despite whatever people said, but you overcame. So that's, but I appreciate all of y'all.
Thank you. I want to move us along because we have, oh, sorry, Dr. Whitman, did you want to say something?
Yeah, it'll just be brief. I just wanted to piggyback on what was just said, and it was amazing to hear that. And she was talking about trust and love, and we learn trust and love through proximity of other people, right? We're not just born and know what it means. And so, whenever a young person, trauma-informed care, struggles with trusting people, struggles with self-love and loving other people, it's because of a community and an institution failed to be trustworthy and failed to be loving to them. And so in this context of foster care, that is the community and institution that is failing young people of really caring for them and creating loving and trusting spaces. So then when they're adults, they know what that looks like.
That is so important. And I think there was a question in the chat about what can foster parents do to support foster youth while they're going through higher education. And I think you really just touched on that eloquently. It's building those trusting, loving relationships and letting them know that you're not going to leave them. I've experienced personally, and I've seen friends and other people in care, once they turned 18 and went to college, things were different in their foster home suddenly. It was a switch up. And so just that consistent love, that consistent trustworthiness is so crucial. This is such a good conversation, y'all, but I'm going to move us forward, even though I hate to do it. We have one more poll, y'all. So have you or would you go to therapy? It's a yes or no question. Don't think too hard about it. Go ahead and drop your response. You can also put a comment in the chat too about this if you like. So have you or would you go to therapy? And personally, I love therapy. I have two right now, technically. Two therapists. I feel like I could have more if I could afford it. But would you or have you gone to therapy? Let us know. Okay, awesome. So we have 96% of people here saying that yes, they would, and then only 4% saying no, they would not or have not. All right, thank you for sharing. So, and I just want to open this up to everyone on the panel, and I feel like we've gotten a chance to know you as an audience now. But when you were younger, did anyone force you or require you to go to therapy? When I was in care, they required me and my younger sister to attend therapy. And I think that was standard practice for Allegheny County at the time, but I'm not sure if that was true for other counties in the state or if that was happening in other states. So please feel free to share your experiences. Were you required or forced to go to therapy at all?
So I was in foster care in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, from like 9 to 15. First of all, I was forced at a certain point to seek out psychological services, but and I needed them. I was so angry, and individually abusive experiences with my mother that told me living with her wasn't the best thing for me. But I was kind of stuck in the middle. I needed the help, but there was such a stigma surrounding it, almost to a person, anyone involved in psychological services, doped up on medicine. This was before the whole opiate epidemic, when as a society, we didn't pay close enough attention to the reality that medicine isn't a cure-all. And so, my brothers, my foster brothers, my biological, or Ritalin and all these medicines, watching how people's personalities and the light in their eyes degrades is scary. It's scary. That's traumatic. You're talking to someone one day and then the next day they're zoned out, and you can't. It made me afraid to seek out that kind of support for fear that I would end up in an institution. I would be labeled one of the problematic kids who ends up going to group homes and boot camp and all these things. So, so I was I responded poorly to a lot of the things going on around me, and I responded angrily, and it resulted in me being forced to go to therapy. But because of my fear of the stigma, I was a pretty clever little kid. I manipulated my way out of it. Well, I played the sad little foster care route, and she was like, "This kid's fine. He's normal." He had an outburst, and it incensed my foster mom to the point that she wanted me gone. I did receive care. I was afraid to engage with the care for fear that something inside my head would put me in a category where now I can't. I have to take medicine, and I'm labeled a certain way and talked about a certain way, and so I think I'm guessing. I mean, this many years later, like it was so encouraging to see like 90-something% of people are advocating for therapy or participating. I mean, I was afraid of it, and for that reason, I was behind on where I could have been as far as my self actualization and improvement. So, yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I don't think I was forced. I knew I wanted to actively pursue therapy, and that I was like, there's too much that has happened. Like I need to go to therapy. I don't know if it's gonna come up like subconsciously or what, but I definitely want to be proactive about this. But my experience was more so like at first there wasn't how do I say this? I was the therapist in that situation. Like a lot of times it would end up switching, and I've noticed this with a lot of other people who have lived experience where like you end up being the one that's their, therapeutic, however you say that, counseling, the counselor. So that was my experience for like 4 different ones until the last one. And that was such a healing experience to have someone that looked like me, that had similar experiences, not in foster care, but as a Black woman. And it gave me so much validation that I wasn't crazy. And then she was also trauma informed. So being able to chronologically share my experience made me feel like that was something behind me. I was able to conceptualize it and put it in front of me as opposed to like hold it within, and be able to say, okay, that's what that is, put it to the side. How do I want to move forward? And we're actually still connected. She calls me her little sister because we're not in a therapeutic capacity anymore. It's a very much kinship relation. And she wrote the prologue to my book, The Black Foster's Handbook. And we're actually currently co-writing a clinician's guide for youth. So I think such a huge and impactful relationship that I guess depending on how you're introduced to it can be so healing.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think for like in the past 5 years, therapy has become more and more destigmatized. But kind of what Alfonso said earlier is I want to remind everyone of, especially when you were Black and brown, how nefarious clinical settings were for Black and brown people. My brother was just pushed full of Ritalin and other psychotropic meds to the point where he was like a zombie, right? He was a bit more darker skinned than me. He was a bit more bigger than his age than I was. And he was a lot more extroverted than I was, right? And expressed his emotions, expressed his trauma more outwardly. And that was just too much for foster parents to deal with, right? And so, although I think therapy is useful for folks who decide to go, we also have to understand that like a lot of clinical spaces historically and even present are not necessarily always safe. And so we have to understand that then some young people still might not want to go, right? And that's okay. And then to my other point, as I'll say, I go to therapy now. It's great. It took forever to find a good Black therapist. But also, we can't just recommend therapy for young people who have issues and then wash our hands of the problem. We still have to show up for them as a community and love. Like therapy is like the tip of the iceberg. It's the start. But they still need loving people around them that are going to uplift them, that are going to protect them, that are going to all the things that a community needs to do for young people.
I just want to share. Can everyone hear? I don't know if this is working now. All right. I appreciate everyone sharing out so vulnerably and really listening and holding in this space. I just want to share this that therapy in itself is really just this very westernized, white framed institution. And the number of fostered, adopted, kinship placed individuals, young people without consent, who are then like subjugated into therapy. And like Dr. Whitman said, just kind of wash my hands. I checked that box and really trying to really hold this to destigmatize and truly educate through a very decolonized lens about what therapy really means. Because it's a difference between this consensual and dyadic togetherness and an interpersonal therapeutic relationship between a therapist and a client when an individual is ready, not because they're going to be therapized as a weapon. And so many of the young adults that I see now, I have stopped seeing individuals pediatrically for a variety of reasons, but the vast majority of whether they are adopt or foster parents are the ones who need the work the most. And really then looking at, am I utilizing therapy and weaponizing therapy? What does that really mean? And this isn't going to be popular, but I'm speaking in terms of community of fosterees and adopted folks, particularly those holding queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, Asian people of color, people of global majority who do not see themselves represented therapeutically. And it has taken years just to find someone who looks like myself to sit and reflect back experiences, not because of merely because, oh, they're in foster care, but because of systemic issues that everyone is so vulnerably and authentically shared. And on top of that, then even dissecting these really pathologizing diagnoses. The number of individuals who come to me have no idea what RAD is. And I can go off on a whole tangent about how pathologizing reactive attachment disorder and how erroneous the vast majority of application that is overly diagnosed within the foster care and adoption communities against our communities, and then redirecting what that means, that it's something that I've done versus this interpersonal relationship that's built on trust, and it is built on a slow build of being able to share out safely. And if I know that if I don't do this and I'm going to be moved again, why in the world would I share that with someone else when there's no confidentiality truly? And our young people have no consent or assent to even do that. So I look and I hold these power dynamics as well. And then the number of individuals who couldn't even tell me what that means because it was just given for them, not with them. And the number of individuals coming who have been on so much psychotropic meds that's enough to tranquilize a large scale blue whale. Like, why we wouldn't do that if this were a child, if this were your biological child, would you do this? And Riley go, okay. Like that blows my mind, and it hasn't changed that much. Decades of research, and still not much has changed. So I'm up here speaking like just ripping the system because that pain is righteous and the rage is righteous. When I sit in these very privileged and sacred spaces with alum and adopted people and those impacted by the system who hold these stories. And no, if I were to go to another person in the system, they have every right not to believe me and not to trust me and not to hold that it's going to take a very long time for me to prove that I'm going to show up. I get that. And then we ask everybody to do that, and we ask children to do that and go into a space and fix it. So let's turn that back around. Because if the family system isn't willing to do that, if the adoption workers aren't willing to engage in their own therapy, and trust me, my therapist has been a lifesaver. If they're not willing to do that work, then you don't ask our young people to do that unless they want that and they give consent and they understand what the cost is. Because then that's called adultism, and it's pathologizing young people. And I know I can go on a whole other tangent with that, and I'll probably get feedback about the individual stories. I get it. I've worked in the system. I'm hearing that. I'm not dismissing that. What I am saying is I'm speaking to the humanity of each of the people on this panel and the humanity that we've lost in the system.
That
So,
was so powerful. That's very, what I'm hearing is for us to decolonize our healing. That's what I'm hearing. Don't get caught up in the idea of stigmatization. Don't get caught up in just therapy. Again, back to Dr. Whitman's point, it takes a village to heal a child, right? It's not just one therapist. And sometimes you have to shop around for therapists too. It's not just throw some medication and some labels on them that'll fix it. That can itself create more harm than good, right? And doctors are supposed to do the least amount of harm and the most amount of healing, but that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. This has been such an amazing conversation. So thank you for showing up. I really am so grateful for you all being here. Really quickly, can each of you offer some advice to our audience, whether they be family members, whether they be current people in foster care, whether they be aged out, whether they be stakeholders? What advice would you give them for supporting foster youth who are on this higher educational journey? And you can speak from your personal experiences, you can speak from your professional credentials, whatever feels good in your soul. What would you like to leave us with before we go into a few minutes of questioning with our audience members?
I'll just say quickly, as someone who worked with foster youth for probably over a decade in higher ed and been in schooling myself for probably over a decade as well, we have to we have to show up for them in the same ways a biological parent would show up for their child. And we have to advocate for them at the highest level constantly. And even though I had like a 9 to 5 job at a public university, had all of the red tape and bureaucracy, all of my students had my personal cell phone number, and that was a lot of them. And if they needed me after hours, I would show up for them, right? Whether that means giving them a ride home, a meal, picking them up from jail, like the wild stuff I would do, but then also wouldn't judge in the process. It'd be a conversation tomorrow morning, though, to hold them accountable, but not right now because they're probably at the lowest of lows, and it's not right now. This ain't the time or place, right? They're probably already shamed that whatever happened, and I'm picking up at county, right? And so we really have to show up for them in like radical ways because these universities were not built for them, right? And so they're already being re-traumatized again, being in these higher ed spaces, navigating it where there's just another ID number, right? And so I think we really have to show up for them, and really remove these barriers and really elevate them.
Thank you. Anyone else want to go?
Yes. So I think from my personal college experience and then now being a certified holistic health coach and that entire journey of like, how do we holistically heal from those things and how do we prioritize that as opposed to focusing on coping and recognizing to what Dr. Whitman was saying about the community and what Jay was talking about decolonizing. And I think a lot of those terms for folks at this time it's very daunting, and it sounds like, what is the practical way to actually do those things? But I think it's why did we forget like that these are youth, that these are kids, that these are teens, adults, humans. Like I feel like I'm constantly in spaces where that part is confused somehow or lost. And because you've had certain traumas or because you look a certain way, you come from a certain cultural background, that you're to a certain standard. So I would say, as far as practically, to educate yourself on why those statistics are that 3% youth and people with lived experience are graduating. Why is it only 3%? And not necessarily just highlighting and uplifting the 3%, but like, what exactly is that? Why is it that way? And having those conversations, like Family Media Connections and Ivory hosting these types of spaces to really get to the nitty gritty and like what has actually happened, what is really happening. Purchasing a copy of that book, College Ready, Career Prepared. Just really leaning into the community for those conversations and getting clear with folks from lived experience, as well as every constituent that is a part of that. So the folks that are doing the therapy and folks that are receiving the therapy, the foster parents, the social workers, what are those experiences like for them? And how are we able to better support them through those resources? I know everyone's about abolishing, and I agree too, but I also think that as far as practical ways now, right, we need something in place now before we do the abolishing. We can't have abolishment and there's nothing there. So I think that's probably what I would say, is really just looking at every avenue from the people's lens and doing that research, and then practically, how can I show up in my space, whether I'm a therapist or a social worker, alumni of CARE, to speak out about this and have better outcomes for those coming behind us.
Thank you, Jahi or Alfonso.
I think it's like a chain link fence or a social media network. The foster care system is no different. It's only as strong as the components that connect to make the thing work. It's only as valuable as the volume of connections and the quality of those individual connections. Foster parents, adopted parents, all these non-traditional ways to take care of children and raise them and see them on their way, they have a really unique opportunity to dramatically change the course of a really underserved population. I think extreme advocacy, support, showing up, being consistent present, meeting them at their level and challenging them to grow and sticking with them when it doesn't work out, rewarding when it does. These are the things that allow people to trust you enough to listen and to engage to the extent that they need to. But I think that us all understanding that the floor is slippery, the field is terrible and rocky, the system is broken. That challenges all of us in a different way to engage and to address and to approach the thing in a way that moves folks along. When I was applying to Milton Hershey School, Westmoreland County Children's Bureau was on strike. They were on strike. And so I had no way to get to Hershey from Jeanette, Pennsylvania, where I was living. So I was going to have a chance to go to college, meet new people, get out of foster care, do all these things. But, the office is shut down. And so it's over. My caseworker ripped out a bunch of 20s, paid my foster mom on the side to drop me off, told her, promise don't tell anyone I was here. She went out of her way, broke picket lines, risk. I mean, she's retired now. So she was like 3 years from retirement, risking it all to see me be okay, to see me through the finish line, and to advocate for me because she knew that I could take advantage of this opportunity. That's the type of effort it's going to take. Selflessness, same thing we do for our biological kids, but it takes more to produce that because we just don't see it as often. Be selfless, give for yourself, take a chance, and you'll be surprised how it could turn out. And that would be my challenge to really anyone who has a direct, relationship with an ascending youth, is to do you be the difference in their life, and watch and continue to water that flower and see how it grows. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks.
Thank you. You want to take it away, Jahi?
Well, I think on two things. So one is, I want to be concise with time. One is for, particularly for foster alum and for those with lived experience to really hold just the power of who you are, the power of your people, moving back into your ancestry, moving back into the space that really that you hold, that regardless of where your feet are, that there are other spaces of yourself, and that this isn't about this positive wrap up, but so often it's kind of coming back. Well, I don't know where I fit. Well, where have you come to this place? What has brought you here? Destigmatizing therapy is allowing yourself that liberation, that space to allow yourself the freedom to be able on your terms to put together your narrative outside of what other people have tried to share and box that in. And I think that's such a powerful reclamation, part of that decolonizing, but part of that process of really opening up that space to know that there are not just the community, but there can be relationships that can be really healing and can be really foundational in that, whether that's therapeutic, whether that's in community, for those who are in practice, for those who are, consider yourselves foster care and adoption, child welfare professionals and representatives. It's literally, I appreciate you coming to these sessions and continue to open up space to literally absorb, pay for the labor, and hear individuals with lived experience, particularly QT BIPOC. There is inundation in the academic and any kind of literature field, but that is predominantly not authored and penned by creatives and those with scholarship who have the lived experience, and several here on this panel. That is who you need to listen to and attend and elevate in your work and integrate into your work. When we're talking about trauma informed care, I'm talking about trauma inclusive care, because that can be informed without being inclusive. And so some of the things that have been shared today may hit you in spaces, and so I just want to challenge you to sit in that and then do something with that, and really recognize what that means for you if it's coming up, because then that may mean therapy for yourself as well, because we're all, in terms of what this means, we're all trying to deconstruct that, and it's not on just foster alum and adopted people and those impacted by kinship to do that. It is not on us to do that wholeheartedly by ourselves outside of the community.
Wow, we just have dropped so many gems. I'm like, okay, I need to talk to Jahi after this. Really quickly though, I just want to sum up everything that we've talked about here today. So let's destigmatize healing for self and others. It's better to be proactive than reactive, especially for people with lived experience in foster care. And then therapy is important. And it's not just for foster kids. Please give them the opportunity to consent to it, but also for those involved in their caregiving and those who are stakeholders in child welfare. So long story short, we all need to heal. If you would love to continue this conversation with our panelists, feel free to send them an email. I'm sure they would love to speak with you. Now, let's keep in mind, y'all, let's pay people for their experiences. These are lived experts here. We have doctors on the panel too. So if you want to call them into circles, let's compensate them adequately too. But also please read their things that they've published, buy their books. If y'all panelists want to drop your links in the chat, please feel free. I want to give you the space and the time and the opportunity to share and push your products because they're a part of this work, realistically speaking, and what you have to say and what you've done matters. So I want to give you a platform in which to share that. Drop that in the chat. Feel free to interact with them. And at this time, I think we have about 5 minutes left. So if there are any questions or lingering thoughts, not only from our panelists, but from our attendees, please, let's talk about it right now. So I see one, is there a webinar on college ready, college prepared? I joined late. Were there any resources regarding college and career preparation shared? So our magazine publication, there is a print version and there's an online version. You can click right in there and that's going to list all of the resources that we've spent months compiling and gathering. And those resources look like organizations, they look like monetary help, they look like entities that Dr. Whitman has shared with us. It looks like providers like Jahi has shared with us today in the work that she does. So you really want to check out that publication that we shared and we can share it again as well. And then we're gonna try to see what we can do. We want to have some more panels that do talk about the resources specifically in that guide. And moving forward, let's have some more discussions about some more things. I feel like we could talk all day about this. Any other questions, any other comments, any other concerns? Okay, well, thank you to each and every one of my panelists. Like when I tell y'all, I feel like y'all are my family, so please accept me as such. If you haven't already, we can get a cookout together, maybe towards the end of the summer. I think that might be good. I'll work on the t-shirts for us. I really, really am so grateful anytime I get to commune with y'all and share our stories because not only I know that we're making transformative change within child welfare and that it's so important for those behind us to see us as living examples that we can do and be whatever we want to be, no matter where we come from or the circumstances we've experienced. But it just makes me feel good in my soul. So thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. Consider me a friend, consider me an ally. I look forward to speaking again. Hopefully this is not the last time that we get to share our wisdom and speak in these circles. And thank you all for attending. We really do appreciate your time and your energy. I believe this will be sent out to you later, so feel free to use it in your references. Use it in terms of how you create your policies and your procedures. Use it when you're training your foster parents. If you're a teacher, use it with your students. Make it a part of your assignment so that these social workers up and coming and these lawyers up and coming can have the perspectives of people who directly experience the child welfare system. And to our sponsor, again, thank you so much in Fostering Families Today and the Imprint. I love y'all. Y'all have been good to me. I'm trying to be good to y'all. And I send you off with that. This was amazing. This was wonderful. Thank you so much and have a wonderful, beautiful day.